Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
Boy, I love this time of year, and we'll be talking about A Christmas Carol today. You know, it was A Christmas Carol that first got me to think about transitioning.
It was a Christmas carol.
Yes, it sure was. It was one in particular. Deck the halls. Don we now our gay apparel. So the story, A Christmas Carol, is really important to me.
It is definitely a classic.
I actually played Ebenezer Scrooge in a play. I was probably one of the greatest actors that ever performed Ebenezer Scrooge in our fourth grade play that we did. And
I remember it very well. And the thing that stands out for me more than anything else.
What is that?
When you were walking across the stage, and I believe that Jackie was behind you.
She was
she was in front
ghost
of you.
Of Christmas Future.
Yes, and she was in front of you, and you were looking around, but you were hanging on to a scarf, I think, that she had around her neck or something, and she kept walking, and you kept pulling it off, and she turned around and took a swing at you.
No,
not a swing like that, but just hey, get off,
I just remember that we were supposed to face towards the front of the stage, and she kept turning around, so I kept trying to take her and turn her towards. No, we're supposed to be looking out there. Yeah. And then, of course, a guest of this show, Vic Civic, who we had on March 22nd, actually played Tiny Tim.
Yes. So there was a lot of connection here.
Yes, there sure was. We wanted to talk about the Ebenezer Scrooge Guide to Changing Hearts for LGBTQ plus inclusion. Because the character of Ebenezer Scrooge goes through a major transformation. And there's a lot that we can learn from this story about how people change their minds and their hearts about things. And of course, it's appropriate with the theme of the season.
But he doesn't change his mind instantly. It's kind of a grow into it stage. We see him in the beginning as the bah humbug guy. We see him in the beginning where he's really, his only employee is somebody that he's really not very nice to.
Right. Bob Cratchit.
Yes.
Bob Cratchit comes up and says, "Please, sir, may I have a raise?"
Yes.
Or can I have off for Christmas is what he asks. He's not even asking for a raise yet, is he?
Right.
He's just asking to have off for Christmas Day, and Scrooge doesn't want to let him have off.
That's right. He is really not a nice guy in any way or form. He just clearly is not happy with anything or anybody. And I just had a conversation with somebody about that just yesterday. We were talking about people who are unhappy all the time. And it seems as though they're not happy unless they're unhappy. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's their life. And it doesn't matter what it is. You can come up to a person like that and say, "Wow, it's really nice out today, isn't it?" "Yeah, but it's not going to last."
Right.
I mean, that's exactly the kind of response you get. And
they'll look for the negative in everything.
Absolutely. Wow, isn't he a nice guy? You don't know. Could be.
They're always looking for, and I think some people will do that as a defense mechanism. And in fact, we learn in the story or the movie or whatever version, there's so many versions of this, that Scrooge himself, it's because of his past. It's because of his history that he ended up being the way that he was.
Yes, and that's what the ghosts tell him. The ghost of the past, the ghost of the present, and the ghost of the future. The ghost of the past starts out by saying, what made him that way? You think that's usually the case? People who are unhappy people, something made them that way? Or is it something they chose to do? Were they that way because they were raised in a family that always kept them angry, or
I think probably everybody is different, and there's aspects of our personality that are always going to draw us one way or another. And there's aspects of our environment that will reward us for behaving certain ways or not behaving certain ways. And I think that LGBTQ skeptics oftentimes have been rewarded. I was talking earlier today with somebody that's in high school right now and is secretly LGBTQ and is with a group of friends who are all homophobic and transphobic. And she said, I feel like I have to put on an air of transphobia and homophobia myself, even though that's not how I feel. But I don't want to get pushed out. I don't want them to make fun of me. And so she continues to hide who she is so that she can fit in without having people pick on her.
Well, when I think back to my school years, junior high, high school, and beyond, all my friends were, I would say, homo. We didn't really. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was little knowledge about anybody that was LGBTQ. All we would think of would be gays. And did we know anybody like that? We didn't think so.
Right.
Of course we knew.
Of course.
But we didn't think so. And everybody I knew, they would make jokes about them. They would make comments about, I wouldn't want anything to do with them, et cetera, et cetera. But so what happens when you're in a group, any kind of group, but your social network, and they're all that way, it's easy to chime in.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. That's what we do. We are part of the crowd. We want to fit in. So we go along with whatever they say.
And it was heartbreaking to hear the story that this is what somebody still in 2024 feels like she has to do in order to fit in with her friend group. But I completely understand that.
I do too.
I think every one of us can resonate with that. For the people that are not doing it just to fit in, because there's a whole culture that has developed there, studies show that just knowing an LGBTQ plus person can increase acceptance.
Yeah, well, if they do know someone, they realize they're just like everybody else. But you have to wait to get to know a person like that.
So when someone is resistant, try to share your own experience or that of someone else that you know who's LGBTQ plus, because sharing stories really helps us to humanize the issue. It makes it a lot less abstract. It's not just about politics, about those people out there. And all of a sudden it becomes about real live people. And that's the best thing we can do to help folks when they're in that bah humbug phase.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then as Scrooge goes on in his story, as we know, it goes on, and that night he goes to sleep, and he's visited by his old business partner, Jacob Marley, who says, you're going to be visited tonight by 3 different ghosts, and listen to what they have to say, because if I would have listened, my life would have gone better. And of course, the first ghost is
the ghost of Christmas past, of course. That is the one that says, let's reflect back on your life. How did you get like this? What? You weren't always that way. There were times in your life that you were kind of a nice guy. Take a look at that. And you dated this girl. Of course, it didn't work out. But you were attracted to her. She was attracted to you. But it didn't work out.
right.
That was step 1 in moving you toward becoming sour on life.
Towards becoming a skeptic, sure. And what else may have happened? And that's, of course, what happened with Scrooge. What happened in this person's life? Where did this come from? and probing into the history of where has somebody come from? Where have these beliefs come from? Where did they stem from? Nobody is born hating anyone. That's something you develop.
Yeah.
Your life tells you that you don't like certain people, and you develop it as a defense mechanism.
But there's additional developments. It's not just your attitude. It's not just your persona. It's not just your personality. People like that who are unhappy people, you can see it in their face. They develop that expression. It's there all the time. They never seem to look happy. They develop it in the clothes they wear. Suddenly they don't care about their personal appearance. Sometimes they let themselves go in a variety of other ways. Don't bother to comb their hair or use makeup or whatever it happens to be. They just think, I don't care about what other people think about me, and I don't care what I think about them. I'm just going to be the slob that I am. And that isn't always the case, but it often is. You see these people, and they don't really, they not only are unhappy, they look unhappy. They carry it with them. It's their costume. They've built it. I can remember one time being in a gas station. I may have told this story before. Being in a gas station, and I was filling my car up with gas. Another guy on the other side of a pump was filling up his gas. And right behind me, this truck comes rumbling in. And it's rusted out, and it's got a bad muffler. Rumble, rumble, rumble. It comes in, and this guy stops. He rolls out of the truck. And he's got a T-shirt with the sleeves cut off, and he's looking really rough and not unshaven and really rough looking. And rumble, rumble, and he slams the door, and he's got one of these bug deflectors on the front of the truck, and it says, "The devil in disguise." And I look at the guy pumping gas. We're both looking over at this guy, and I says to him, "Not much of a disguise." But that's it. That's the persona they carry with them.
Right.
So you know immediately, well, I bet you this guy isn't going to laugh a minute.
Now, of course, not all LGBTQ skeptics are going to look that way, and we don't want to caricature everybody that way. But you do have a sense of, if your identity is filled with hate towards any kind of group or people, there's something that you're carrying with you from the past. What happened? Where did that bitterness originate? Why is your resistance, where did it start to begin with? Is it rooted in religion or tradition? Highlighting values like fairness and empathy can help to reframe those views.
So you have to realize sometimes when you approach people that are skeptics or are reflecting on something else and they are not allies, there's something back there that helped them develop that situation. Maybe what you need to do is maybe share some of your ideas and your values with them. Frame the LGBTQ rights as part of a broader values of kindness and justice. Or maybe try asking questions like, is it fair to treat someone differently because of who they love? This can shift the conversation from divisive debates to universal human values. Makes sense to me.
Of course, with Scrooge, we remember the story that the ghost of Christmas past takes him back to that dance. And I remember when I was playing Scrooge, the ghost of Christmas past taking me back, and I got to see the other kids dancing there. And something happened at that party that set him on a course towards his bah humbug.
Yes.
And what happened in this person's life, if we reflect on that, try to connect with those shared values, that's how we can start to see hearts change.
I am Mark Zimmer, a listener and supporter of Transcendent. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 45 years, and oh, what a journey that was for me to understand the LGBTQIA community and what that meant. I was so not understanding and hurtful. So this podcast is incredibly important to really educate and understand and to hold relationships together. So I urge you to consider listening, of course, but also supporting. You can go to transcendent.com and click on the heart with a support button. You can give as little as $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Important for all of us on this journey of understanding, keeping relationships together, truly being people of love.
The next ghost that Scrooge encountered was the ghost of Christmas Present.
Yeah, what's it like now?
Now, remember, the ghost of Christmas Present brought him and showed him the miserable conditions that his own employee was living in, Bob Cratchit.
Yeah.
Showed him the family, showed him how difficult things were, and Scrooge realized when he actually saw his own employee as a human being and not just as an employee that he could boss around, he realized his heart was touched.
It was touched because he saw Bob Cratchit living a tough life, but a happy one. He was still a happy person living a life of love with his family, and how much he cared for his wife and his family. And that made a big difference. That had an impression on him.
And they talked about him, and he had no idea what they were saying. He had no idea that they viewed him as both a man that was just full of hate and bitterness and just not a very nice person to be around, but also cared for him. That Tiny Tim said, I hope that he has a good Christmas.
Yes.
And his heart was melted at that point.
Yep. And it's the same way when you're looking at people who are not allies. Highlighting values like fairness and empathy can help reframe these views.
Right. Studies show that when people are exposed to diverse representations of LGBTQ plus individuals, they are much more likely to become affirming. As long as you dehumanize, just as Scrooge was dehumanizing, it's easy to see those people out there. But as soon as you recognize that we're humans just like anybody else, that's when acceptance can start to happen. So the more that we can share the stories of here's what my life is like, here's what my family is like, here's what my daily reality is like, the more we can connect on that human level.
Now, a lot of people hear people say, well, I can be accepting but not affirming. The people that we're talking about in the beginning, the Ghost of Christmas Past is talking about, are the people who are not affirming, they are not even accepting. When Scrooge sees the Christmas present and what he's like, he moves a little bit into, well, I can be accepting but not affirming. A lot of people think, oh, that's not right. But it's a step in the right direction. You're moving that way. Now, what happens next?
You know, I was thinking a lot about, with my own transition, one of the things that made it so difficult is that I was not at the place where I thought it was normal to be transgender.
Oh.
I believed that it was a weird thing, and I didn't want to be like those weird people. If I had seen good representation, if I had realized that I could live the life that I'm living right now, and I'm living a normal life, I'm working a normal job, I live in a normal small town. My life is the same as everybody else around me.
You got a normal podcast.
Yeah, right. Right. And I mean, I have a very abnormal dad. But the point is, it is the same as anything else. I am just as strange in the ways that we're all strange. And I am just as normal in the ways that we're all normal. It is not strange to be transgender any more than it's strange to be left-handed,
Yeah.
or any more than it's strange to be any of a host of other things that make us different. The more that we can help skeptics and those that are on the outside to see there's no difference, we're just like everybody else, the more that we can see those hardened hearts melted and that acceptance come about.
Sometimes when you think something is strange, it's only strange because it's something you don't really know. Somebody says, well, what do you do? And they say, I'm a philosopher. What? Boy, that's really strange. It's not. There just aren't a lot of them. I don't know any philosophers, do you?
No,
But
I
there
don't.
are people who make a living doing that.
Sure.
And because there aren't, because it's not something you see every day, people can look at somebody like that and say, that's not normal. Yes, it is. Of course it is.
Sure.
It's legitimate.
Sure. And when we're following our hearts, we're all going to be doing things that are not quote unquote normal.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
not one of us is just like everybody else. And we are at our best, not our worst. We're at our best when we step out from the crowd and we behave as who we really are.
Exactly. That's why I see my life as a situation comedy. And I feel good about it.
That's good. And we want that. The more that we can help people understand, whether through books or film or social media or just telling stories and sharing our own stories, the more we can have visibility out from people that are gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender and all of the other groups of folks that are in the plus of the LGBTQ plus community, the more we can demonstrate how we're all just part of the same human group.
Each of us is unique, and we can help someone see beyond stereotype. No one is stereotypical. In some ways, yes, maybe, but not in all ways. Each person is unique, and each person is not only unique, but a person that is a loved person.
Now, Scrooge started to change already. By the time he had finished with the Ghost of Christmas Present,
Yeah.
he was already starting to come around. But the real nail in the coffin came,
Literally.
yeah, came with the Ghost of Christmas Future.
Mm-hmm.
As he took and he thought, I'm ready to change and I'm ready to be a little bit better. But he was not ready for what would happen if he did not change. And of course, what happened?
Well, the Ghost of Christmas Future took him to his own grave. And he realized life is short. I'm reaching the end. I still have an opportunity to do something good here, to become part of society, to be a person that has what Bob Cratchit has. He has the happiness and the love. Yes, maybe his life isn't perfect, certainly, and I haven't made it perfect. I've contributed to what I think would make him an unhappy person, and yet he can live a life of happiness and love. I can do that too.
Of course, Scrooge didn't just see his own death. Before that, he actually sees the death of Tiny Tim.
Yes.
And in that moment, he sees the family gathering around. And he himself has that sense of loss and the disappointment about what his actions have led to, that he could have given Bob Cratchit a better life so that he could support his family. But because he was so miserly, because he was the definition of Scrooge, Tiny Tim then did not make it, which then shows how the family came around Tiny Tim and how much they loved him. And then in contrast, for his own death, nobody mourned him.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared. Nobody was there. Wow. What a tough life. And all he's got, is it a nephew?
Right, his nephew.
And his nephew came earlier to invite him to
Christmas dinner.
No, he didn't want to have anything to do with that until the ghost of Christmas future changed it.
And he realized. So what can we do? Well, you can ask someone to imagine a world where everyone can be their authentic selves without fear. If you can help them picture that, if you can help them understand what it would look like for someone to not have to hide who they are, that can help them take steps to become more affirming, and that they can understand how they can contribute to a better society for future generations. It's, of course, not always so easy like this. But the goal is you don't just tell people, you help show them.
Let me go back to the key word you said, that they can be their authentic selves without fear. That's what you had to experience too. In the beginning, when you were considering becoming transgender, you said, maybe this is something weird. This is not normal. This is not something I should be. Until you came to the point where you became the authentic self,
right,
without fear. Not only is this something that each of our LGBTQ listeners need to come to a realization of, but every single supporter, every single ally out there needs to become their own authentic self without fear that somebody out there who is LGBTQ is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not how it is. But this whole structure of how Scrooge went through all of this is not only mirrors the transformation of Scrooge, but provides practical steps to foster LGBTQ plus inclusivity in our own lives. By sharing stories, by reflecting on values, by offering representation and envisioning a positive future, allies can help turn the tide of acceptance. They not only can, they will, and I am testimony to that.
That's right. You remember Scrooge got up in the morning, and he wasn't sure what day it was, and he had to lean out that window and say, what day is it?
Yes.
Now, you know what will never help you forget what day it is this podcast. We are always here for you Monday morning.
That is right.
Is that a stretch? That one might have been a stretch. But we're grateful to have you coming back here week after week. And we hope that we are your voice of positivity as we think about ways that we can help other people and ourselves to not live lives of hardened hearts and bitterness.
And it's really cool if you happen to be watching the Scrooge movie, A Christmas Carol, with someone else that isn't an ally, when that is over, you can turn to them and with a smile on your face, you say, "We'll see you Monday."